With me in the studio from the University College in Elephants, Gail, Corrin and Pippa Edmunds, and a law student amongst law students at Hull University is Kathryn Sharman. All three of them are here, and me as well, and we're here to talk to you. And if you'd like to ring, it's 66 13 68 is the number, 166177 to text, and studio@manxradio.com for your emails. One or two in, and there's another phone call in now, and it's for Rob. Good afternoon, Rob.
Afternoon, Roger. I hope you can hear me. My voice is not too good at the moment, but I want to make a few points if that's possible.
Yeah, I can hear you, yes.
I'm a child of the 50s and the University of Life. And I can see Kathryn's points there. We should look after our most talented pupils, and it takes a bit extra funding to get them where they want to go. We should do it, because there's no way that they can do it themselves. And we should look after our best pupils, but also we should look after the ones at the bottom. And they're the most important ones. And are we doing enough? Apprenticeships, I took an apprenticeship as a decorator, and I got my indentures. And those indentures that were never used in my working life. So are they any different today?
What did you get your indentures in?
Painting and decorating.
In what? Sorry?
Painting and decorating.
Decorating.
Painting and decorating.
Okay. Right, okay. So what you're saying is that we should support as much as possible. Is that what you're saying?
Support top and bottom.
Yes, okay.
And Kathryn, I can see her points there. She doesn't want to get to the rest of her life, but she has a little bit of support from us, from this government. Mm-hmm. And I go along with what she said.
Okay. All right, Rob. Well, thank you for calling.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Right, that's Rob. Now, talking about apprenticeships, as you say, there's 2 or 3 comments come in by email about apprenticeships. David says that when he was young, he was surrounded by older people without qualifications who knew what they were doing. Now he seems to be surrounded by younger people with qualifications who don't know what they're doing. So it's
yes. Ever thus with that dilemma, I think. Yes.
Right. As a former university life pupil, no, I think he means former university of life pupil, I ask, are the less bright students getting the same chances? I'm not totally convinced by apprenticeship certificates as mine was of no use during my painting and decorating career. I'm not convinced by apprenticeships as mine were. I'm not too sure whether he means there weren't much use to him. I think that's what he means. When people go into these apprenticeships, and of course industries move on now, don't they? You can be qualified in 1 month and it's changed 4 years later. But the apprenticeships still, and you call them other things, Pippa, when on our previous programme, obviously they've still got quite a serious value here, sort of working by the feet of the master, as it were.
Absolutely, and Pippa's comment earlier about what does that word mean. I mean, with a small a, the concept of apprenticeships is learning from work, learning from experts and from mentors and coaches, and how that's actually organised can vary depending on what the area of the apprenticeship is in terms of the discipline, but also the level it's at. But I think that one of the interesting things that's happening on the island, or has happened on the island, is that with University College Isle of Man is now part of Kildare is now part of University College Isle of Man. We're looking at reviewing our funding. We have a lifelong learning agenda as part of government. I think we're really getting to grips with that the education you get, whether or not you want to do A-levels and go to university, whether you want to do apprenticeship or a vocational award, whether you want to change careers 5 times, come back, do it later, we really have an opportunity now to organise our funding as well as our offer to meet all those very different needs that people have in the contemporary world that we live in. So I think apprenticeship is alive and kicking. We might just need to look at the shape of it and what it contains differently than perhaps what people might remember from the past.
There's no such thing as a job for life anymore.
No, absolutely not.
And if we've got time, Roger, whilst we were off the air, Kathryn was explaining that when she's finished her degree, she then has to go and do 2 years practical experience within a law firm to be able to get her articles. It's an old-fashioned word, but that's what I call them. And that effectively is also a form of apprenticeship. So we're not looking at it. The funding doesn't stop once, or the funding requirement doesn't stop once you finish your 3-4 years of degree. There is then a requirement, if you go into professional training, to be able to fund that, to be able to live then.
Right now, we've got a phone call here now and a couple of other texts that have come in at the same time. Isn't this lady asking for the whole tuition fees to help her to live whilst at university? So basically, she'll pay off the whole loan instead of the Isle of Man government sponsoring her for $6,500. If that is so, then it's not being greedy. So are you suggesting that you get the whole lot?
Yeah, that's the point I'm trying to make. So they're already generous in the money that they give me. They're just not giving it to me in the area that I need most.
So you would be prepared to pay the whole lot back?
Absolutely, because it would still be half, almost half the debt that a UK student graduates with.
Okay. Keith, good afternoon to you.
Hi, yeah, I have two children at university at the one time. One's at St Martin's in London, and one's at the University of Liverpool. I think the problem you have at the moment is that the students aren't listening to your programme because you need to listen to the students. But I know that my children, my wife and I fund them, which is financially crippling. The halls for my son in his first year were £10,000 for his halls before we'd fed him. He tells me that all his friends have access to a student loan system. And in the Isle of Man, we don't have that access. I rang up the government and asked them, can they give us any help? And I was told that if my wife and I earn over £25,000 a year, we get no hope for one child, no help for one child, which means £50,000 for two children. So the onus seems to be on the parents. The parents are paying for their children, which is fine as long as you can afford it. But the ones that can't afford it, what happens to those children? If their parents earn more than the threshold the government allows, but still can't afford it, maybe they've got big houses to pay for, big loans to pay for, I don't know. But those children then can't go to university unless their parents fund them. They have no access to any loan system whatsoever. I think this is what this young lady's trying to say.
Okay, well, thank you. I'm going to have to cut you off there because we're at the end of the programme. But thank you for calling anyway.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right.
Thanks,
Bye.
Keith. Very quickly, as two young teachers who've had to contribute to our studies from our own pockets and since returned to the island, we really appreciate the financial support offered and are embarrassed by the sense of entitlement shown by some young people today. Right, well, that's the last comment I'm afraid we have time for, as we're running right out of time. In the studio with me today for the Mannin line was Gail Corrin and Pippa Edmunds from the University College of the Isle of Man, and Kathryn Sharman, who's a law student at Hull University. On the switch was William King, and I'm Roger Watterson, and we'll be back again next week. Until then, goodbye.